Welcome back. You're watching Stockwatch with me, Juliette Televi, and joining me this evening to take your stock-related questions are Mark du Toit from Oyster Catcher Investments and also Zwelakhe Mnguni from Benguela Global Fund Managers. If you'd like to send those questions, please SMS us. 41392 and email stockwatch@bdtv.co.za. We have got Mark on the line because Zwelakhe is having a few problems with his audio at the moment. Mark, good evening. Not a particularly good start to the week for the JSE, and it's interesting to note where the rand is at about 1870. So notwithstanding a few reports about dollar strength and people deciding now is the time to sell off dollars, the rand has been pretty weak against a basket of currencies. Would that imply that it's all sort of self-induced pain at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, on our numbers, the rand is largely fair value. So, we tend to see our rand kind of overreact in both directions. And when it's sitting at around 1850 for us, that's kind of, where it should be. It's not wildly expensive. It's not wildly cheap. So I don't think the move is very, is that noticeable, actually. 1870 to the dollar, it seems like it's near where it should be, really.
Okay. So we're lucky. Have we got you? You're sort of sideways now. Yeah, sideways, but we'll take it if you've got sound. There we go. Hurrah. Okay. So we're lucky. Nice to see you there this evening. It's been a while since we've chatted. I was asking Mark about the rand performance today and also the general market being a little bit weak. Just firstly, your view on the rand. Do you think that there is any signal that we might start appreciating from these levels? Because we did look as if we were heading back below 18 and then we blew out again.
Yeah, true. I think my view is that we'll probably see a sideways movement until there is the confirmation that the US hiking is complete. I think that will probably support multi-major market currency, and we'll see the rand benefiting from that as well. I think we hopefully see improvements around the load shedding. We see improvements around the Transnet freight rail. I think those two might actually enable us to earn some forex and basically be able to support the rand through trade rather than the Reserve Bank.
As far as the results that came out today are concerned, before I get to questions, Mark, there were some decent numbers. Zeda, the leasing group that was spun out of Barloworld, seemed to do really well. Tsokosan's numbers weren't bad. Standard Bank came out with a trading update. As to the Zeda results, did you think that the market is maybe finally starting to appreciate the company because it has been quite unloved for a while?
Yeah, I think they had fantastic results. We have seen the fleet rental companies, they sold down their fleets post-COVID, and now the travel's returned, and travel, particularly in Cape Town, been very strong. They've got some pricing power, and they're able to earn a better return on their assets. So I think that they are in a good spot, and their share price certainly is not expensive. The thing to always watch out for is the earnings from the fleet, the fleet reduction. So if they're selling vehicles, kind of strip that out from the numbers. And in these numbers, there wasn't a big number from fleet sales. So it is kind of all from normal operations. And I think because it's a small cap stock, it typically is a bit overlooked. And it does look quite cheap, actually, at these levels.
So, Zwelakhe, do you have any warm feelings towards Zeda?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the numbers that came out look solid. I do think that it has been overlooked and the price looking relatively attractive. I think it should see a slight improvement in valuation in the markets.
Okay. And just before I get to a question on some of the resources stocks, there was a question that came through on City Lodge Hotels. So if you consider that Zeda's, I guess, exposed in some ways to the tourism market, you had Tsokosan coming out with results today, also exposed to the tourism market. And then the viewer asks about City Lodge, and he says, The stock price has reacted positively, presumably to the latest AGM, which occurred last week. This reaction is interesting compared to the stock's decline after very positive results at the June year end. I've believed the company to be undervalued and also a prospect of continued internal growth and thus becoming increasingly undervalued. Does the panel believe the market is fairly pricing City Lodge? So Zwelakhe, staying with you, what do you think?
Look, I'd probably say that there is a bit of pricing of a strong capacity utilization. As you know, they did go into a COVID situation and the capacity utilization was depressed. There have been seen some benefits as the tourism recovered, but I think to some extent, I mean, in my view, it's probably fairly valued at current levels. I think the market has priced in a bit of the recovery in the market, in the tourism sector.
Okay, so it's fairly valued for you. You don't think it's a screaming buy?
No, I don't think it's a screaming buy.
Mark, how about you?
Yeah, I'm in the same camp. I mean, I think it's, as the capacity levels increased, I mean, obviously the earnings increased off the back of that. It's got a high fixed cost base. So as you've got more bookings, your earnings increase a lot. I think the capacity was sitting around 60% in their latest update. So there probably is a bit more room to grow. And I mean, we also think that next year's GDP number for South Africa is going to be maybe slightly better than what people expect. So probably a bit more to come from City Lodge, but I wouldn't say it's not a wildly cheap investment, but you could probably hold what you've got and still do well from here.
Okay. Moving on to resources stocks, and a question has come through on Orion Minerals, which I know is not widely covered by the market, and the VIA also says there's seemingly a lack of analyst coverage despite the stock having been listed on the JSE for quite some time. My questions are as follows. So these are quite lengthy. I'm going to try and truncate them somewhat for the sake of brevity. Could the panel please elaborate on the poor performance of the share, given all the positive news surrounding the news of a 250 million rand earmarked for their Prieska project? Both IDC, Clover Alloys and Triple Flag have all injected vast capital into the project. Most recently, however, Clover Alloys has chosen not to exercise its options to buy more shares, which has sent the share price crashing hard and fast. So is Orion faced with the real possibility of running out of capital? Orion's flagship project was Prieska. It subsequently bought O'Keefe. Faced with a very real potential of not being able to fund Prieska, was the O'Keefe acquisition a mistake? And also, while the latest cyclical fall in copper prices is believed to be due to a slowing in the Chinese economy, if the news is to be believed, copper is still likely to see a boost in demand. While a number of big mining companies are investing in buying copper mines, why have our locally listed companies chosen to make offshore acquisitions rather helping develop local mines in partnership with Orion Minerals? So as I said, a lengthy question. Firstly, on the poor performance of the share price, Mark, any idea why?
Well, I think that, first of all, it is a smaller mining company, a smaller resource stock. And these companies typically don't attract a good valuation because often the projects require more capital than what's originally expected. And the costs often come in higher than what is originally budgeted. And so your returns from the smaller mining stocks historically has not been very good, and so the market's not willing to pay up for potential projects. I mean, once a mining company is established and it's got earnings and it's got a dividend track record, and you can see that management have good capital allocation and make good decisions, then it's going to start attracting a fair multiple from the market. So I mean, a lot of investment funds just will not invest in early stage or smaller mining companies just because of the higher risks. Copper, we do think that the outlook is favorable, but there are a lot of copper projects that can be developed. So Glencore talks about being able to double their copper output. Recently, we saw Tech Resources, they published their almost like a list of projects, and that can take their copper output from 1 million tons to 2 million tons a year, so double their output as well. So there is actually a bit of copper mines that can still be developed. Also, the political change in Argentina is quite interesting because there's quite a lot of copper projects in Argentina, and maybe with the new dispensation, those projects actually become more viable. So yes, I mean, global demand for copper is going to increase, but there is actually a fair amount of supply that can also come on. And so not necessarily will we see this big squeeze in copper prices that some people foresee.
So maybe the two other questions. Why aren't global or bigger mining companies partnering with small companies like Orion? Is it because they're just not big enough to move their own production levels? I would imagine that that's maybe the reason, but I'd like to hear your view. And also, if you look at Orion, do you think it may have to go to the market to raise more capital?
Look, it's not a company that I know well, and I do think that this type of business has got some risk. I mean, if you buy into projects, you actually have quite a bit of execution risk on the table. And I think the fact that one of the funders has walked away, I mean, these are people who have done a detailed due diligence on this business. I'll be a bit worried. So the discipline in management, how management chooses to focus on what they say they'll do, I think would be a good indicator. And the fact that they've deviated already is not a comforting factor. So I would think that the bigger companies would probably be reluctant to partner if their strategic input is not being taken into account.
And then the question, why have locally listed companies chosen to make offshore acquisitions rather than partnering with smaller players like Orion? Or, I mean, there's Copper 360. There's a few small companies to partner with in South Africa. Why do you think that is?
I would think that the companies, I mean, there is an effort to try and diversify away from the jurisdiction risk, the regulation, the infrastructure problems that we have, the electricity problems. So bigger companies are looking at broader spectrum of opportunities around the world where some of these challenges may not exist. So it's always a portfolio-based approach that most of these companies take, rather than just being the opportunity, because a high concentration on SA investments would probably put you at risk of if Eskom doesn't work or the rail network doesn't move, you've got a bigger problem.
Yeah, okay. We shall leave it there for the moment. If you'd like to send questions, please SMS us 41392 or email stockwatch@bdtv.co.za, and we'll be back after the break.